6:28.
Oh.
Wow.
It's gonna be chilly tomorrow. Yeah, chilly tomorrow.
Chilly. Before I open the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili.
Present.
Foster is absent tonight. Gilmore present. Hearn.
Present.
Lee.
Present.
Sampu.
Present.
Hangney.
Present.
Staff member Kim Kavanaugh.
Present.
Agent Ed Hoops.
Present.
We have a quorum and the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November the 28th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. for the applications of Town of Barnstable, Sandy Neck Beach Park, Dimitri S. Herman, Mystic Lake Hills Civic Associations, Auxilia Fix Trustees 333 Superior Road Realty Trust, Robert Fitzpatrick, Daryl Sullivan, and Selling Hassel, Donald Billing, Thomas and Ann Teller. The hearing is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. The plans and application on the file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointments by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, please let the chair know if anyone is recording this meeting. Hearing none, this evening's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda, next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to the Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed by the Governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to the hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1. The hearing will be televised via Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. 2. The real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom link 889-4901-0887 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. Third, the public can also email the comments to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. Tonight, we have an executive sessions. The executive sessions for the purpose of discussing litigation strategy with respect to the following pending appeal. If the chair determined that an open session could be detrimental to the Commission's litigation positions. 1. The Department of Environmental Protection, DEP SE 3-0684 request for a superseded order of conditions. And 2. Barnstable Superior Court 2372 CB 00245 by JMS Holdings, LLC at 134 South Bay Road, Osterville. I declare that the discussions of the litigation strategy in open sessions with respect to the pending appeal by JMS Holdings, LLC at 134 South Bay Road, Osterville, as shown on the Assessors Map 093, Parcel 064, modifications of existing pier by converting the post to pile supports with no change in footprint. DEP SE 3-06084 and Barnstable Superior Court Docs 2372 CB 00245 may have a detrimental effect on the litigation positions of the commissions. And I therefore ask the motions to go into executive sessions. Following the executive sessions, the commission will convene in open sessions. I'll recognize the clerks to make the motions.
Mr. Chairman, I move to go into executive session under General Law,
Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss litigation strategy with respect to the pending appeal by JMS Holdings, LLC, at 134 South Bay Road, Osterville, as shown in Assessor's Map 093, Parcel 064. Modification of existing pier by converting from post to pile supports with no change in footprint. DEP SE 36084 and Barnstable Superior Court Docket 2372CV00245. Based on the chair's declaration that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the commission, and will reconvene in open session following the conclusion of the executive session.
I second the motion.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
That is unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Stone, we're going into executive sessions.
Okay, I'll start inviting you over now. Ed, I'm going to email you my phone number. So just if you could just send me a text message when you're ready to come back.
Okay.
We are back in the open sessions. Are we ready to go, Stone?
All set.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 RDA this evening. The first one is Town of Barnstable, Sandy Neck Beach Park, to place 2 8x8 seasonal sheds at the mouth of the off-road vehicle access trail at 425 Sandy Neck Road, West Barnstable, as shown on the Assessors Map 263, parcel 001. Nina.
Good evening, Commissioners. Requesting to put 2 sheds at the mouth of access trail for our emergency water response program. So we did put this in our habitat conservation plan, which we had to renew, 5-year renewal. So we did that recently, and the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program did review this proposal and approved it through that process. And now we're coming before you to be able to do that sheds for next season.
Any questions from the Commissioner to Lena? Oops, you see here. Don't see any hand up. John?
Yeah, I thought, anyways. Nina, quick, I assume these are just empty sheds. They're not, there's no water, there's no toilet facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Isn't that right? And they're seasonal. They come down into the season.
Yeah, we're going to bring them out with a piece of equipment. There's no foundation. They just would be placed on the sand. We need to be able to remove them quickly in case there's an incoming storm. And we anticipate storing them in the parking lot for the winter. So they're really just going to be on the beach for those 3 months when we have folks in the water. We unfortunately don't have lifeguards anymore, so we've had to move to other means of managing water safety. And so we have an emergency response vessel. We want to get an AED and other equipment down right on the beach.
Thanks, Nina. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Any other questions from the Commissioner? None. 10:18. Any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Albedili?
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Agni?
Aye.
Sampu?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
The second idea is Demetrius S. Herman proposed deck additions at 10 Nine Neck Road East, Sanderville, as shown on the Assessors Maps 233, parcel 023. Dan?
Good evening, Chairman Lee, members of the Commission. Dan Orgula with Downkeep Engineering. With your permission, I'll share my screen.
Yes, please.
Walk you through this quickly. This is a site many of you have seen before. Years back in 2015, just when Mr. Herman was buying the property, we got permitted a quite large house and a garage. He decided not to do that, and instead he kept this much smaller house and this little sheddy garage that's here. As part of that, too, we had agreed to basically revegetate the entire 50-foot buffer except for a little tiny beach and walkway, and a little corner of this deck got over. We actually had an enforcement order where I think that deck was constructed, and again, much smaller than the original permit. He had some disturbance where we really weren't supposed to in here, and a pile of dirt over here. He revegetated that. The entire 50-foot was revegetated. He struggled a bit, as you may recall. We had temporary irrigation, but we had droughty conditions and sandy soil. But Emma was out there and thought everything looked good, and we got the certificate of compliance a little while back, a few months ago. So now comes Mr. Herman, and his wife has been ill and would love to have a place, a respite over here, a little deck. Again, here is the original. You can see here the original home, and this other one is twisted, but just for reference, you can see that north is to the left now, but there's the existing home, and in green is what we're proposing, and in red is what we had approved before. There was a big garage over here, a great bigger house with porch, and then the porch went out here. Basically, the entire area that we're proposing is within the older approved footprint. Again, that was closed out. We didn't do the work, and then there was an enforcement order and stuff, but just to show. And so what you'll do is we took a look at those mitigation calculations back then, and you're looking at a situation where there was the entire 50-foot buffer was revegetated, except for a little bit. We had proposed hardscape of about 5,600 square foot and revegetating about 2,423 and change. The entire beautiful lawn area that he really had cherished is all gone now and mitigated back right to the 50. But that's fine. He can live with that. We've got the path. And so he's not building all this other that was proposed, just this one little deck. So we brought it in as an RDA. We think it's pretty reasonable. Again, we've paid for it by mitigating the entire 50-foot buffer except for the path and a little de minimis corner deck. So hopefully you could find your way to approve this without any further mitigation as an RDA. Again, it's much smaller than was originally had hoped for, but we think it's reasonable and be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Dan. Question from the commissioner.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Bill?
Yeah, when I looked at the plan and I saw the corner of the deck, which was in the 0 to 50, I thought, well, there is some there, so I wondered whether or not it should be mitigated, this new construction. However, in the site visit that I made, I was amazed at how totally pristine, if you will. It's nothing but woods on his property to either side of the house, and I thought, well, there's nothing here you can't mitigate. So I'm like, perfectly good. You call it de minimis. I'd say it's just there's no reason to mitigate. You've got trees and forest on most of the property, so I'm happy with the project.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I just was concerned about the mitigation in front. It didn't look in great shape, but it's the time of year I looked at it. But I agree with what Bill said.
Thank you, Angela and Bill. Any other comments from the commissioner? And any public comment, Channel 18?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Tangy,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate your time and we appreciate your comments. He prides himself in having a very natural site. Thank you.
Thank you. The last outday of this evening is Mystic Lake Hill Civic Association's repair to wooden retaining wall and access stairway landscaping and beach nourishment at 30 Sawmill Road, Marston's Mill, as shown in the Assessors Maps 063 parcel 062. Anyone from BSC Group?
That would be me.
Hannah. Hi,
Good
Hannah.
evening. Good evening, Commissioners. Hannah Raditz, wetland scientist with BSC. I will go ahead and share my screen with the project plan. That would be this one. Hopefully that's showing up for you all.
Yep.
All right. So this is a pretty simple project. This site is beach access for the Mystic Lake Hills Civil Association. Currently, it's a footpath down to the edge of Mystic Lake where there is a sand-nourished beach. And currently there is a wooden retaining wall which is in need of some repairs. So the proposed method of handling this situation is to cover the majority of the wooden retaining wall with sand, about 25 cubic yards of sand, to be graded at a 2-to-1 slope onto the beach gradually so that there's no significant slope. There's currently a walkover structure on the southern side, which is called out as needing repairs, but it's unlikely that it's going to need them since it was installed recently. On the northern side, they are hoping to repair the railroad tie stairway, which is inlaid within the wall. So it will require pretty minor work just to keep that stairway available as a walkover. the plan for stabilizing the beach nourishment sand that will be placed on top of the existing retaining wall is to plant it with American beach grass interspersed with New England erosion control and restoration seed mix, which includes a variety of grasses, which should be able to take hold pretty well and stabilize this area. That is the majority of what is proposed. Our resource areas on site are the 100-foot buffer zone to the edge of inland bank associated with Mystic Lake. There will be no impacts to land under water bodies or to the priority habitat, which exists at the water line for this site. We don't believe that there will be any significant impacts to the resource areas, and this is a method that's not going to require any ground disturbance, though sediment and erosion controls will be on hand and installed at the edge of the work area for a time period that probably will be only a few weeks, perhaps even less than a week, to control this work and get it stabilized. Obviously with seasonal conditions keeping in mind. I will go ahead and turn it over to the commissioners to see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Any question from the commissioner?
Pete's
Bill?
got some questions.
Oh, yeah. Let me go to Pete first.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So looking at the plan, concept plan here, you have 25 cubic yards in the close vicinity to the timber piles. And then you have area of beach nourishment for an additional 15 cubic yards?
Yeah, that is just a call out on the area of beach nourishment that is existing. There's only 25 cubic yards of sand that's proposed on the retaining wall and sort of enough to grade at a 2-to-1 slope. But there's no additional beach nourishment to be placed.
Okay, so you're 25 cubic yards of sand is that's like 3 reasonable sized dump trucks. I got a buddy who delivers 8 cubic yards, and that fills his short bed dump truck. Now, the question I got for you here is, how are you going to get 25 cubic yards of sand down that hill?
That is a good question. I am not sure what the plan is for that. I would assume that they would be taking maybe skid steer fulls from trucks backed up to the roadway. I don't believe they'd be able to get a dump truck back there, so it would probably be a slow process using smaller equipment to get down to the beach.
Okay, so my observations, having walked that and being quite familiar with this spot, is that you start taking a skidder or something down that slope, and right now, even with the walking path, there's some erosion happening. Now, it's not much, but there is some. You take a skidder down that, and you're just going to open up just an erosion gully, I would think, that's going to be extraordinarily hard to contain. Additionally, so that's one worry, erosion, and how are you getting this sand down there where there seems to be no clear method outlined to do that. Secondly, looking at the actual beach area, so lakeside of the timbered pier, there is a beach section at the southern, maybe third or quarter of this flat area. To the north of this clearly a beach area, which has been nourished with sand, it's pebbled and it's reasonably well vegetated with very low growing grasses. What's going to happen in the future? Is any of this sand that you're somehow getting down there going to be going over this pebbled and grassed area that is to the north of the obviously enhanced sand beach area?
It's my understanding that the nourishment will be mostly contained to the wall. I just pulled up some photos from the site. So you can see right now that there is some low vegetation here on the beach. The plan would be to expand this beach nourishment or the sand to cover the wall over onto the beach and then grade it slowly. So it would cover up that bit of vegetation. But I imagine if this is the natural state of the beach, it would eventually start to look like this again. But there's no plan to expand it necessarily onto the beach because the beach isn't the target of the nourishment. It would just bleed over a bit from the covering the retaining wall and onto the beach.
Yeah, so I guess my concern here is seeing this as an RDA. I'm seeing significant, worrisome potential impacts to the slope going down and to the near shore existing vegetation, and certainly a worry I would have is any of this sand bleeding into the shallow waters, which is all good cobble habitat for native invertebrates. So I see this as a bit worrisome as an RDA. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Pete. Bill?
Yeah, I have also a lot of problems with this being an RDA. I think 25 cubic yards of sand is a huge amount of sand, and it's not natural to the shoreline here at Mystic Lake. If you look to the north and you look to the south, we basically have a wooded landscape right down to the water's edge. And on either side, it's a gravel substrate. And so this area where the Mystic Lake Association has their beach, it's a highly artificial area. And I think putting in that kind of sand is just counterproductive to the well-being of the lake. I also was concerned about using beach grass, Ammophila. I thought that's for stabilization of dunes, and you're putting in sand, and I kind of get that, but it's like it's usually in windswept areas. It's a hardy plant, but it's not natural to the lakeshore there, and it just seemed really pretty artificial. And I share Pete's concern about the access. When I was there, I thought, you know what? If I don't like the sand, I do see the retaining wall as being a problem. I mean, it's falling apart. I have like no problems with putting in and restoring the stairs. That's fine. But putting in that slope of 25 cubic yards of sand, I really have real heartburn over it. And I thought, well, what would you do? And I thought, well, you could replace this retaining wall. It's there. It would be obviously a struggle to pull it out, but you could put it back in, put in a new one. Alternatively, if it wasn't sand, something that's just very likely going to be very unstable for the long term, and instead you use some kind of fill, like, fill and planted the heck out of it with shrubs and whatnot. I think, a really heavily planted fill, not sand, would be another alternative. I just had a real lot of problem with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Angela?
Yeah, I took my hand down, but because basically I agree with Pete and Bill. There's a lot of erosion there. It's a very steep slope. I'm not really sure I understand bringing all that sand in. Why not propose fixing the retaining wall? So I agree with the other two commissioners.
Thank you, Angela. Any other question from the commissioner?
Yeah, Tom, just one question. Yeah, Hannah, what was the reasoning behind 25 cubic yards of sand rather than just replacing the existing wall? Was it a dollars and cents thing, or what was the reasoning behind that?
I don't exactly know the answer for that. I think that one of the reasons behind it is it was cheaper and also less impactful to pull out the whole wall and then replace it back in the footprint. because of the excavation that would be needed. I also don't know, going back to the access issue, I don't know what kind of machinery they could get down onto the beach to accomplish that as well. So that could be a hiccup as well. But I believe this was a choice to try to be less impactful and probably save money as well.
Yeah. It just a small mini excavator could get down there easily to replace the wall. We look at it and we say 25 yards, is a fair amount of fill down there. And what happens to that if it, rather than just replacing what's there is there. You could replace that, and I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. I don't know. I have trouble too. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Hannah, what I'm hearing is that we have a concern about the 25 cubic yard of the sand, the movement of that. We don't have a concern about replacing the retaining wall and steps and so forth. We can approve that part and not the sand stuff. And, if you want to come back with the sand stuff, that would be a difference, because we probably need to know how you're going to move it, what is the protocol and all that whole 9 yards for information stuff. So, what is your preference? Because in our DA, we cannot do continuous.
I understand. It may be worth bringing back to the client to understand, with the commissioners being more comfortable, it sounds like, with a replacement of the retaining wall rather than placing the sand nourishment over the top, that it could be better to just revise this application, to come back with a application that focuses on replacing the retaining wall rather than the nourishment. Even though the walkover stairway embedded within the retaining wall is one of the goals, it's not the major goal. So perhaps it would be best to pull this application.
So you want to withdraw?
Mr. Chairman?
Ed has his hand up, Tom.
Yeah, sorry, Ed.
Hey, I'm just to give a little bit more clarity, or maybe not so much clarity. The association does have a nourishment permit that was done years ago that does allow them, I believe it's 15 yards of sand as part of the beach nourishment process. It's not 25, but it's I believe it's 15 if I remember correctly. And so I don't know if that makes any difference in your thinking, but I guess my question to Hannah then would also be obviously they've done nourishment in the past. How did they get the sand down there in the past? So
yeah, I don't have an answer to that
at this point.
Lots of wheelbarrows.
Yep. I don't have that knowledge offhand. I would assume there would be some sort of small machinery or wheelbarrows, but we could also add, in addition to the sediment and erosion controls, to add some sort of track pads, especially to areas that are steeper or getting likely to get rutted or eroded, just to help machinery or the wheelbarrows get back and forth.
Let me go for the public comment, and then we can discuss about whether you will want to withdraw the application or not. Chenowiki, any public comment on this?
Yes, I'm the president of the association.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, how you?
Do you have a comment?
Jay, you have to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, someone unmuted. Okay, I do have we did design a path on the right-hand side of the stairway to bring down a small piece of machinery that we already have a ability to bring down like a yard of sand at a time for the sand. So we have a path on the right-hand side of the stairwell that's already been cut out, that's been there for years. We cleaned it out this year.
Okay.
So I know that's one of your problems is bringing the sand down. So we would not be wrecking anything to go down that way.
Thank you
I don't
for the
know if that answers
explanation.
one of your questions.
Yeah, that would be the kind of like the protocol, how you're going to move the sand down. So you
Right. So we already designed that way before this. We did that last spring. We cleaned it up. It's been there for years. It was a way to bring boats down back in the day. And we cleaned it up last year. It's a nice little path, you know, that we would not wreck the stairway or break anything going down forward. And that's how we're going to bring the sand down. As far as some of the other questions, I thought that, you know, I can see the different plants. We don't know the native plants. That's something we're using the company for the native plants. I get that part, but that's my only real major question is what we should use for sand or dirt or whatever. But they have all those, you know, the way that wall's built, it has all those lock-ins. I think taking it apart, that's going to be a huge monetary problem for our association. We're a small neighborhood. We only charge people $100, you know, a year. I don't know if we could handle rebuilding that wall in the next few years. That's one of my issues. That's why when they came up with this sand idea or dirt idea or native planting idea, we thought that was a great idea to keep the cost down a little bit.
Okay. Thank you,
so I just want to give my input on that.
Yep. Thank you. Any more public comment? Channel 18?
None.
None?
I've got some more input, please. This is Pete.
Yeah, Pete.
Sort of the one thing that has been brought up, which I think is Bill brought it up as a good option, and Angela seconded it, was some kind of dirt. I just do not foresee sand, essentially commercial sand, being able to support a strong enough vegetation cover to to keep that 2-to-1 slope stable. So, however, though, if it's dirt and it's well planted with more woody kind of vegetation instead, I mean, I hunt out on Sandy Neck. Beach grass, it doesn't form a thick, a thick mat. It can handle pure sand. I don't know about the other grasses and dry grasses that they've listed, but sand is not a good growing substrate or for controlling erosion on that bank. I mean, make it dirt with maybe a little bit of a burlap cover that they do. We've got lots of good examples of controlling erosion on banks at a 2-to-1 ratio, and I think that's what the association ought to be looking at instead of sand. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. That's a good suggestion. The other thing, though, is before I go to Bill, Hannah, how high is the retaining wall that you want to build to have that 2-to-1 slope?
I don't believe building the retaining wall is part. Just placing sand on top of the retaining wall high enough to make that gentle slope from the top of the retaining wall down onto the beach. So I don't have a height, I don't believe.
It's about 4.5 feet.
4.5 feet. You're not replacing part of that retaining wall, just back buried with sand?
Yeah, because it's got all those dead, what do they call them? Dead weights going way back into
they're called dead men.
Dead men going way back into the beach area. Not the beach area, I'm talking, to the back slope. So there's a bunch of those in there. It's a very sturdy thing. It just needs to be reassured and cosmetically look better.
So if it peaks, let me go to Bill. Bill?
Yeah, I just like to amplify on what Pete said, and I also want to, if you will, compliment Jay, who said, you could put in dirt, not sand, but some kind of soil/dirt where plants will grow. The one thing I wanted to add to Pete was that in addition to these grasses, I really think that having, some shrubs that can grow in there. I'm thinking of like sweet fern, that kind of a thing. That's, like a low shrubby kind of vegetation that not just a grass. But if Jay's open to that, I mean, putting in dirt rather than sand and having the thing planted well with an erosion control plan, you know, that's sounding a lot better to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
As the president, I am definitely open to any suggestions that the board has, and I would definitely talk to BMC or the environmental company about that.
So it sounds like from what I'm hearing from the commissioner is we're suggesting to backfill the base against the retaining wall with some soil, and then maybe you can top the sand. Maybe I'm thinking out loud, 4 or 5 inches of sand on top, to give you that slope, but with the sand, with the soil at the bottoms to stabilize the base, and then some planting on top. George.
Yeah, I just wonder if that's something Ed would feel comfortable that we could leave it in consultation with the staff. Not to throw you under the bus, Ed, but.
I mean, I think we can. I think we can do that. I guess it's not changing the RDA substantively. You're still placing some sort of a fill. So I guess that would be okay. I mean, you're not changing the design. You're not changing anything other than you're changing the type of fill, and then top dressing with the sand. So
type of fill and plants, doing consultation.
We can turn around a revised narrative and project plan. I think that this plan would still work really well with the New England erosion control and restoration mix. This mix of grasses I see typically in areas that are partially shaded or in full sun. So we should have good stabilization through these grasses. And we could add some small shrubs like the sweet fern or other low growing shrubs that would add additional stabilization to that slope. But I believe we could be able to turn around a revised narrative and plans and any other supplemental materials within a few days.
Thank you, Hannah. Bill,
Tom, I'd like to, if I might, contradict you. I heard you say put like a few inches of sand on the top. I'm not thinking there's sand on the top. I'm thinking you're creating essentially a soil, a dirt, landscape that is being planted. You're not layering sand on top of it. That sand is only going to just promote runoff and eventually it's going to end up either the pollutants running off the landscape upstream, or that sand itself is going to end up in the lakes. I would stay away from that sand in that area.
Well, we can restrict the sand to the beach where the sand nourishment has already been approved.
Yeah.
And not right on the slope.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Any other question before I try the motions?
I would just caution again is that you have to be very careful because you're talking about an RDA, so we can't do a lot of major conditions with this. We can do some certain minor conditions to it, and I would assume that you would be doing some sort of erosion control either way. So, and I think that was in the plan, but I just caution you that don't change it too much. That's all.
Okay.
Can we have input?
I'm sorry, Tom. I'd like to, Pete. I think, anyways. I'd like. It seems to me, from a procedural point of view, I kind of agree with Ed's concerns. I think the best way to proceed is to withdraw the RDA and refile a new RDA along the lines that the other commission has suggested. I think that would procedurally be a much better way to go, given Ed's concerns.
Yes.
Yeah. Hannah, do you want to withdraw and then refile after you revise the plan?
Yes, I think I understand that the commission, what the commission is hoping to see, I'll just state it out loud again, that the commission is hoping to see soil filled over the retaining wall, to have that planted with grasses and low shrubs, to keep sand to the beach area only, to beef up the sediment and erosion control at the edge of the slope as it stabilizes, and also to be making sure that we don't have any erosion on the path. So we may have track pads on site for the bringing in of soil and working back and forth on that trail. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
So the applicant has withdrawn this RDA for now.
Yes.
And then refile.
And Hannah, if you could just send a letter an email to the office tomorrow stating that you're withdrawing.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 5 NOI. The first one is Alexia Fix, trustee, 333 Superior Road Realty Trust, to demolish an existing guest house and construct a new guest house, pool, patio, and cabana at 333 and 359 Superior Road, Austinville, as shown on the assessor's map 095, parcel 008 and 009. John.
Evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting. Also here this evening is Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson Ecological and the trustee of the property, Alicia Fix. I'll bring up some plans for you and walk you through our project. This work is located on Sepuit Road in Osterville. We have 2 parcels of land that total about 7.5, a little over 7.5 acres. The property in the upper corner is 359 Sepuit Road. It has historically been residentially developed. There's an existing guest house there. There is a new dwelling under construction. The property at 333 Sepuit was actually historically part of the Sepuit Links golf course. We have some interesting history and maps and photos of that, but realizing you have a long agenda, I'll keep it short on that. It is recently developed with a garage structure out near the road. The wetland resources we have at these property, land under ocean is Dam Pond. This is a tidal pond leading out to North Bay. There's a fringe of salt marsh. There's areas of town and state defined coastal banks and land subject to coastal storm flowage along it. And then towards the north, we have Bog Pond, which is not a tidal pond. It is separated by a causeway of land between the 2 of them. There is a bordering vegetated wetland along it. There is also the land subject to coastal storm flowage wraps up and around, and we have some state-only defined coastal bank in that area. As I flip to the proposed plans that zoom in on us a little bit more, again, this is primarily work that's located at 359. This is the property line along Bog Pond, existing house that's under construction out there, existing guest house. The project as proposed is to demolish that guest house, construct a new guest house, pool cabana and pool area. A little bit of the pool patio, I can try to kind of highlight it loosely here. It's a 100-foot buffer to the BVW. A little bit of the pool patio, a little bit of the pool cabana, nick that 100-foot buffer. A fair amount of the guest house is located within it. All the work is outside of the 50-foot buffer. We have provided buffer zone calculations, required mitigation areas, and we've come up with a mitigation plan, which I'll let Wilkinson touch on a little bit. I'll flip over to their plan. But in terms of the site, I think it's a pretty minor amount of work actually that's located within the buffer zones and jurisdictional areas, maintaining that, no work within the 50-foot buffer, standard protocols of pool. Actually, the pool's not even in the jurisdiction, but making sure we're dealing with the drainage, having a limit of work established. And again, I will pass by the land management plan, but bring up the restoration plan. We have come up with a restoration area that I'll let Christine walk through, above and beyond what's required as mitigation, but which would certainly end up in a well-improved buffer along that bog pond area where this work is proposed.
Thanks, John. Good evening, Katrine Higgins for the record from Wilkinson Ecological Design. So our work, which serves as mitigation to offset the proposed activities that John just discussed, aims to provide a more diverse and robust native habitat area compared to what currently exists along Bog Pond in this area. Both of our restoration plan and the land management plan that we submitted both describe that there's currently a mix of both native and non-native invasive species within this project area. On the one hand, you have really nice native species such as oak, pine, holly, cherry, clethra, blueberry, bayberry, and arrowwood. And then on the other hand, you have non-native and invasive plant species that are colonizing the area. Bittersweet, burning bush, glossy buckthorn, willow, vine honeysuckle, and multiflora rose are already really showing clear signs of outcompeting the native plant communities. So overall, we identified that there are 6 species defined by the state of Massachusetts as invasive, capital I, invasive, 1 species considered by the state to be likely invasive, and 2 species on the state's prohibited plant list. So there's a lot of pretty nasty plants out there, and we're seeing this as an ideal time to start this ecological restoration project here on this property. So to do this, as we always do, we propose to remove the non-native vegetation primarily by hand in this location, a sensitive location right along this pond. And as shown in blue on our plan, that area right along the pond is roughly 7,000 square feet in size, and that contains the majority of the invasive plants. And then in addition to this, we're showing in green just about 5,000 square feet of proposed lawn removal. This area will be converted to a native meadow to specifically attract pollinator species. Once the invasives are, well, first we would immediately seed both areas once the invasive removal takes place. And once those invasive species are held at bay, we would like to plant the area as specified on our plan. Proposed plants include shrubs such as arrowwood, clethra, highbush blueberry, swamp rose, sweet fern, and in the meadow area will be augmented by a plethora of forb species: butterfly weed, mountain mint, common milkweed, asters, beard tongue, and lupin, just to name a few of the species included on the long list on our plan. The plan concentrates on really the shrub and herbaceous layers, since those have been impacted by the invasive species. Our plan also capitalizes on differing conditions within the project area. You have wetter areas along the pond, the drier areas upland, shady areas in the northwest and northeast of this project area, and then sunnier spots more in the middle. So we're really looking at those different habitat conditions and using those to our advantage to be able to provide the greatest diversity of wildlife. This expanded diversity of native plants will provide increased food sources, nesting sites, and cover for wildlife that's not currently there. In particular, our plant selection expands the flowering bloom times that will be available for pollinator species, which of course is aligned with your pledge to monarchs through the National Wildlife Federation. So we're seeing this proposal, which spans just about 12,000 square feet. It's exactly at 11,700 square feet, which is above the required mitigation of 9,261 square feet. We're seeing this as providing a significant uplift for wildlife in this area of Bog Pond. And before I end, I just thought it'd be important to point out that these applicants have worked with Wilkinson already for years on 2 significant and really successful ecological projects on a nearby property. The first project was a Phragmites removal project in a wetland, which now is covered in the native hibiscus mosquito in the summer. It's quite spectacular. And the second project we worked with them was an invasive plant removal and large replanting project in an upland woodland. So we're really excited by the potential opportunity to extend this work onto this property as well. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Katrina. Any comment from the commissioner, Angela?
Yeah, I love this restoration project, and the details are great. I just have a concern with the 8-foot cart path running through it. I mean, it sounds wonderful, and it's going to bring back, native species and things there that are not necessarily there right now, but you're also planning on an 8-foot wide cart path running through the whole length of this. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if I stop sharing the plan, I think and I can maybe bring up a photo instead. Let me bring this up. I think hopefully that pops up for you. We brought this down just to kind of help understand maybe yesterday, why we're having this cart path. And it's not so much creating a proposed cart path. This is all an area right now that's wide open to walking and driving carts and doing whatever you want anywhere. And it is a large property, and it requires maintenance, and properties of this size do end up having utility vehicles to get around and do work. And so what we're really looking at here is not creating an 8-foot path. We're narrowing it down to the point where, the path will be just where this cart is right now. And there will be, and you can see kind of where all the restoration stakes go. And the other advantage on our end of having the maintaining, kind of access where it is today is that trying to put that path up above it starts to get more into a sloped area, a treed area, that kind of stuff. So I understand the concern. I think this is a little bit different than someone asking to create an 8-foot path through an undisturbed area or a natural area. This is just kind of preserving some access through it where it's already wide open access. So I don't know if that photo helps or not, but we understand the question comment.
Thank you, John. I think the photo kind of explained a little bit. Bill.
Yeah, I think that photo is very helpful. I also think that plan view that was on before is helpful too, because that plan view, you've got, if we can get, see the way that path is running right through there, I'm thinking, I don't like the idea of the path. It's nice. It was there, yes, and you're trying to preserve it, but having your vegetation all kind of together, your restoration, is it possible to move that path inland a little bit instead of having it skirt the edge? Because having been there, it seems like you're practically right on the water where that path is. There's not a lot of distance between that path and the water. And if you could somehow have this enhanced vegetative buffer sort of all packed in towards the shore, that might be better. You follow me? In other words, right now, can't you just move that path inland a little bit? I mean, I don't like the idea of the path at all, but if you're going to have it more inland so that you have a greater true vegetated buffer. That's one of the 2 points I wanted to make. The other is that I like the idea. I think I heard that milkweed and wild lupin and sweet fern were going to be in that green area. And when we talk about meadows on this commission from time to time, it's like, well, you can mow it once or you can mow it twice a year. And yet, if you're dealing with coneflowers, lupin, milkweed, and whatnot, the idea of mowing the sucker kind of defeats the purpose. The whole idea of having those rather robust meadow plants, if you will. I guess my question is, what's the plan relative to the maintenance and mowing of that green area, that meadow?
Sure. So we would mow that in the dormant season, ideally early spring, late winter. And it's really just to maintain, it's the best way to maintain it as a meadow. We do that on town of Barnstable land as well. So anytime really from now until early spring, I tend to prefer to do it in early spring, late winter, early spring. So the vegetation stays there during the winter.
And the milkweed and they're going to be okay?
Yeah, so the milkweed has already, the seed pods have already released. They would have done that in October. So they're totally safe. They're on the ground right now, ready to start blooming or growing next spring, summer. So okay. it wouldn't impact the milkweed.
Okay. Any way of moving that cart path inland a little bit, even if it's in the meadow area, just trying to have a wider continuous buffer to the water's edge?
One thing that I'm realizing on our plan is we're showing that invasive plant management area as blue, and maybe that's kind of looking like water, but that's all really vegetated right now. So that's like 6,900 square feet. So that there is a pretty wide distance there already. And we're showing the meadow on either side of the pathway. So that whole blue area is currently very vegetated and not in the pond. The pond starts after that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
John? Yeah. Don?
Yeah, I think that she made a very good point, Bill, with that, because at first I agreed with you when I looked at it, but I think the point she just made, it's got me convinced that it's pretty good. And when I look at what's being asked for in terms of the additional building in the 50 to 100 and what's being offered in terms of this plan, I think the environmental impact is so positive. I ended up by saying, other than nitpicking here or there, I think it's really a great environmental improvement, in my opinion.
Thank you, John. Any other comment from the commissioner? Seeing none. 10 to 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. So, John, I'm thinking of two conditions, and the Ed or the other commissioner can chime in if you agree or not agree with the conditions. One is the annual report for 3 years, and then second is Wilkinson is the certified consultant on this project. If there is a change of the consultants, there will be a written notifications to the conservation administrator.
I'd make that motion, Tom, with those conditions.
Can I have some input first?
Well, yeah. Get a second, Tom, and then open it up.
Yeah. Anyone second?
Second.
Pete.
Okay, so I want to make sure there's some kind of demarcation of the path, this 8-foot path, so this doesn't creep into the meadow.
Good point.
Okay. So, John, can we add some demarcation along the path?
Yes.
I modify my motion then to include that as a condition. I think Pete makes a good point. I'd modify my motion.
Yeah, the other thing before you make that is I think we should add the revised plan showing the demarcations. Otherwise, it's not there.
Right. That would be my motion, Don. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone second? Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck, John.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Great job on the plan.
The second NOI is Robert Fitzpatrick to construct a pool, patio, and cabana in 38 Ocean Avenue, Hyannis, as shown on the assessors map 288 parcel 182-002. John?
Yes, good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting. I'm representing the applicants. I'll bring up the plan for you all. This property is a little over half an acre of land undeveloped in Hyannis on Ocean Ave. Interesting, this is a lot that was created in the 70s by this family. And this is this lot and one that we will talk about shortly to its right, and another one even extending beyond that's currently developed. Our wetland resources on the site is a little bit of land subject to coastal storm flowage. Just off-site, there's an area of bordering vegetated wetland. So the work that is within your jurisdiction is a proposed pool cabana, being within the 100-foot buffer, 50 to 100-foot buffer of the bordering vegetated wetland. There's also a state-defined coastal bank running along the flood zone elevation. This slope is neither seaward facing nor adjacent, or whatever your word is, to tidal water body. So some of the pool is within the jurisdictional offset of that state bank / flood zone elevation. We have called for a silt fence as a limit of work here. The work is really all within a kind of reasonably level area of the lot. We are not pushing the 50-foot buffer at all with the work limit or the proposed development. We've called for drainage. I think it's a pretty straightforward project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Before I go to the commissioner, there is two abutters comment. One is from Ashley Kierman, and then the second one is Jasmine Rosen. And their concern is not about the project itself, but basically is asking for a water quality concern about the Stewart's Creek ecosystem. So just want to let you out there, and their comment is in the file. So question, John?
Yeah, I was very, very impressed actually with the letter that we received from Jasmine Rosner, I believe, if I'm reading that correctly. She raises some good points, I think, from a legal point of view, and her argument from a legal point of view had merit with my thinking, and also from a conservation point of view. I tried to walk way back there, John. It was tough, but I made it pretty far back. And that slope really is excessive and steep into a very fragile area. SoD like you to address some of the comments that she is suggesting in her letter. I'm sure you've received it. I hope you've received it.
I saw one of the two letters, so I'm not sure which, but the one I did see had comments about the commission's ability to require more than a 50-foot buffer in areas where the buffer is sloping.
Right.
So if that is this one, I think as I tried to state that our work is actually not on the slope itself. We've made it up to the plateau, before we've made it to this proposed pool cabana. We are not maximizing ourselves to the 50-foot buffer. I mean, I think that this building is probably 80 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland. There'll be more than a 50-foot undisturbed buffer provided. I think that this is consistent with, more than consistent with Commission's past practices for projects in the buffer zone. I don't see us having any potential impact especially because we're not actually working on the slope itself.
How far is the pool the closest to did you say it was 80 feet? Is that correct?
I think the pool cabana is probably about 80 feet. I got the 100-foot buffer here.
Right.
50-foot. We're more than 75.
So the closest to the BVW is in fact around 75 feet, give or take. Is that what you're saying?
At least.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I visited the site, and I have a number of scratches on my legs to prove that I went all the way down
You and I both, Bill.
I went all the way down to that bloody proposed pool cabana, the postings for that. And it is on a substantial slope. I mean, it's not on the, like an upper plane, if you will, which is what the other properties, both 70 and 48 are on. It's down there. It's on a slope. And I had a concern with that. And as I look at the plan, I'm thinking you have this pool, the proposed pool. You have a proposed patio towards the river, and then you have the cabana. And I just wonder, is it possible to shave off some of that proposed patio and just move the cabana, just bump it up like a little bit? I mean, 10 feet, something. I just feel like you're considerably down slope, and I'm not sure what that does to the stability of that valley. We went through, we had a long conversation on this commission on 70 Ocean Ave, maybe a year ago. And we had a top of town bank, and it was an interesting go around. I'm sure John Abadila remembers that one well.
Yeah.
And yet here we're only 2 doors down, and it seems like we're putting a cabana considerably downslope, which we would, we were fighting. We were actually talking about the pool at 70 Ocean Ave, which was up on the flat.
Yep.
Here you're down on a thing. I guess can't we like move that thing forward a little bit by essentially tightening up that proposed patio that surrounds the pool?
Bill, can I jump in, and could you give us the elevations? I'm curious because I couldn't find those stakes, Bill, but I'm curious as to what the elevations are or where that pool and cabana would be.
So I've zoomed in here, and the street is at elevation 22 as a reference, and we continue generally flat. It drops a foot down. It maybe picks up a foot where the pool is. We are level with the road all the way to the back of the cabana.
The post did not seem like that to me. Sorry.
I read it, Bill, as 21. Am I reading it wrong?
That is an elevation 21 off of the back of the cabana, yes.
Okay.
So
and then it drops precipitously down to 18, 17, 16, etc.
And then it starts. So we are, our slope once we got, we even had some of them in here. That one kind of gets hidden. But, from our limit of work towards the state bank is a slope of about 21. Our slope, extending landward of that towards the front of the cabana, this in here is a slope of about 14%. It's sloping, but there's certainly plenty of room to work and not, exceeding that 18%, where I can understand, I guess, if a buffer was more than 18 and we were working within it and there being concerns, and the commission has seen some sites where they required, special types of limits of work and walls and monitoring and things like that, where someone's actually working on an embankment. I just don't see that that's the case at this site.
So looking at the drawing on your contour 19, starting from 19 and down, that's where the steep slope is.
That's correct.
And he's at 21, if I'm reading it correctly.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. At least I'm reading.
Then you're at a 14. It's a 14% slope. That's what we have at the cabana. I mean, that's what John said. So it's about a 14. That seemed like a pretty good slope to me, but I mean,
Yeah.
I can understand more of a concern if we were pushing up against a 50-foot buffer, but we're really not.
Okay. Angela, I saw your hands up.
Yeah, no, I was just suggesting, I wasn't understanding why the concern is being right on the edge. Couldn't the pool go horizontally moved in this plan? Why is it going so that everything is so elongated and going right to that edge? That was only my question. Why are we elongating it right to the edge of that coastal
rather
bank?
than putting it across the property?
Right.
I think that was the design here in trying to sort of maintain some separation to, you know, both properties on both sides. I think they've tried to keep that pool area, you know, as centralized as they can and sort of neighborly, keep some separation to everybody.
Okay. Any other question from the commissioner?
Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead, Pete.
Pete.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's an awful lot of hardscape on this small half-acre of property, and what my fellow commissioners have mentioned, but I'd like to highlight, is the large proposed patio to the south side of the pool, and again, a significantly sized proposed patio to the east and north of that pool. I think some of my fellow commissioners asking the applicant to pull that cabana. It starts about 22, 23 feet on one edge. The front south side of that cabana goes down to 19. So along that is not flat. It's a 4-foot drop over the space of that proposed cabana. If you can just pull it to the south another 10, 15 or so feet by not having these patios so large and, as I think Angela said, elongated along the axis of this property, that it'd make me happier. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
I would note that much of this project, Tom, is out of our jurisdiction.
Yes, we're talking about a 400 square foot pool cabana.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty negative.
Any other question from the commissioner? Seeing none. Anyway, in any public comment on this?
Seeing none. Oh,
no.
Excuse me.
Oh, there is somebody.
Yeah, Minette.
Minette.
Would you like to unmute?
Minette, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, commissioners, for your thoughtful consideration. My name is Minette Basil. I'm a property owner in Harbor Village, which is immediately behind this property. Our house is immediately behind this property. I'm not so concerned about my own house, but the cumulative effect of this project and there is an almost mirror project that you will be reviewing in your next agenda item that will also have a pool. There is the woods that you spoke of with the steep ravine, sometimes has water that goes into the pool, the pond nearby. And that pond has already been compromised with pollution from the two estuaries, Joshua's Creek and Stewart's Creek. In addition, Ocean Avenue had a culvert built by the Corps of Engineers, which unfortunately was not in my limited knowledge, done correctly to allow for the tidal flow in and out. And this has caused a full-fledged invasion of Phragmites in the pond. The adjacent beach, Keys Beach, has had in the last 2 to 3 summers multiple times when the beach was closed because of bacterial pollution. So there's a lot of things that are happening here that are being affected. And when you have 3 houses in a row with 3 swimming pools, 3 septic systems, and other factors, I just feel like there needs to be as much consideration as possible if these projects do go forward. In your chapter, section 704D, titled Regulation Governing Activity in 100-foot Buffer Zones, it addresses the very topic of how cumulative activities can affect negative outcomes. And we certainly don't want to see that in this beautiful area. Thank you for your consideration. And if there's any further information, our homeowner association would be happy to provide it.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Channel 18. Scott.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for letting us speak. My name's Scott Hunter, and I'm here with my wife, Suji Hu. We're abutters on the Harbor Village side of the wetland. And
we get your address?
Number 21, Captain Kelly.
You got it,
Village.
Yep, thank you.
So we too have some concerns because, again, I would really like to discuss, first of all, the slope itself. It seems like people are saying the slope is just a gentle slope. It is not a gentle slope. It does start off gently up at the top of the hill, but it's a very, what I consider to be a pretty steep slope, probably close to 40 degrees, my estimation. Again, I did not measure it. Going down to, and again, Harbor Village is on the downhill side of these three properties. And anything coming down that slope, any pool chemicals or drainage from the pool or whatever goes down, or from the septic, if the septic fails, would go down that slope, and then that's the drainage from there feeds directly into Stewart's Creek, and Stewart's Creek's already compromised with nitrogen and the Phragmites in that mentioned. So we definitely have questions about the plan for the two properties we're discussing tonight.
Are you all set?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you look at the drawing for the swimming pool, there is a drawdown pool for the water to discharge to. They are not running through the slope. And as far as when you mentioned about if the septic failed, they will go through the above ground and go down the slope to the creek. That would not happen in a sense that, that would be a violation from the septic from the Board of Health. That would be a tremendous problems. So want to mention, who said something?
I was just gonna, if it's all right, I'm gonna share my screen again, and I just think, it's important to keep in mind bringing up the assessors here and Stewart's Creek. I understand, it's an important estuary, and all the more towards preserving it, but keep in mind that we're talking about one right now, and hopefully in a couple of minutes, a second parcel, one of two of hundreds that are abutting Stewart's Creek, probably plus a golf course, plus whatever else. We're probably going to be the only two sites that have an undisturbed 50-foot buffer, and we're talking about a 400 square foot pool cabana 75 plus feet away from the bordering vegetative wetland. I struggle to see the cumulative impact of these little developments.
Thank you, John. Channel 18, any more public comment?
Seeing none.
None?
And Mr. Chairman, could I just ask one quick clarification? John, do you have could you provide a note for the person who did the wetland delineation?
Yes, we could add that to the plan.
Okay, that would be the only other question I had.
Okay. Let me try this. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the wetland delineations, date and the time and the person?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Sampu.
No.
Tangney.
No.
Lee.
Yes. Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Oh, God. I'm going to say no.
I've just got to say to my fellow commissioners, you got to give reasons for saying no under the regulations and the laws.
I agree, but they're not even willing to give 10 feet or 12 feet here. They're not even willing to go back and ask for just a little further away from the bank. I think that's why I said no. There's my reason.
Okay, I'll stop talking.
I think that we could, I mean, even without adjusting the patio, there's probably more than enough room to construct this pool cabana on a slab that we could adjust this work limit another 5 feet, and now we've got, you know, a 65-foot undisturbed buffer between any work limit and a BVW. If that, you know, I don't think that would have any negative impact on this proposal. I think that any other changes I would have to bring back to them, and like I said, I think that we're even as proposed is.
Yeah, getting up to 65 feet would get my vote.
Then I'd modify my motion to amend it to include that modification, subject to a revised plan showing that as well.
I agree, because we got to stop doing this. So maybe this will set the precedent from now on that we don't go right to the edge of a bank, and they got to give a little. So I would be willing to go with it if they're willing to give a little too.
So with the motions, anyone second?
I'll second.
And then just before I took the vote, in the sense that, you know, because we have six commissioner, when we have a tie, is a denial, I think. Am I right, yes. John?
Yes.
I think you're right.
So
can you clarify about the 65? Pete said something about a 65. I missed that. What is it that?
So I was saying that we could take this work limit, and this was about 15 feet off the house. So I think it's probably, I can tell you exactly on my other screen right now. At its closest point, that work limit as currently proposed was 60 feet from the BVW. So I think that this, without having to go back to the applicants, I think that this work limit could be pulled landward 5 feet, and then we end up being 65 feet from the work limit to the, and still have 10 feet to construct.
So one quick question here, John. You said something about slab, because as I'm looking at the proposed pool cabana, maybe the center of the pool cabana is about 75 feet, but the northern edge of the pool cabana and perhaps the slab underneath it, that I think is what you were saying is about 60 feet. So you could pull that slab south another 5 feet?
No, we're on, so I'm at 38, and that cabana is 75 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland. My work limit as submitted was 60 feet. I'm saying that I could adjust that work limit to provide 65 feet undisturbed buffer to the bordering vegetated wetland. But the cabana would still say 75, and there was nothing behind it.
Okay. So maybe I'm just, again, I don't have a ruler with me, John, but I see the 50-foot buffer, which essentially you've got your hay bales at the edge of that.
No.
I see the.
I think you're at the wrong site.
I've got
48.
I'm sorry.
If you're looking at the one that has the existing garage and has hay bales, then I think you would be at 48.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. So the cabana, I'm looking at, I guess, the wrong. Okay, I'm so sorry here. Daryl Sullivan and Ainsley Hassel?
One of us is it?
No, this is Robert Patrick. 38 Avenue.
Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry. So, yeah, I voted on the wrong thing. If you pull that back to the 65 on that, I'm cool with that. And there's your fourth vote.
So with the amended motions, John raised and then George second. Roll call.
Take a vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, roll call.
Abadieli?
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn?
I'm going to say a reluctant aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Sampu?
Aye.
Tangy?
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. The next NOI is Daryl Sullivan and Aislinn Hazels to demolish existing garage and construct a pool, patio, and cabana at 48 Ocean Avenue, Hyannis, as shown on Assessors Map 288, Parcel 182-003. John.
Good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting, representing the applicants. I won't waste a lot of time because we've gone through most of this in the last one, I think, but this is a property, again, a little over half an acre on Ocean Avenue. Again, there's a bordering vegetated wetland off the property to the rear, a very similar proposal. It's the only thing that's maybe different about this project site is that there is an existing garage on the property. And I'll try to zoom in a little bit better here for us all. There is an existing structure, garage structure, that will be removed. The cabana will be going back within, generally within its footprint, actually pulled landward some. The proposed pool is not within the 100-foot buffer, but similarly is within the jurisdiction of the flood zone / state-defined coastal bank. And I think that, the patio, some of the patio area is within the 100-foot buffer, but it's within existing pavement. I didn't do buffer zone calculations here because we have an undisturbed 50-foot. Would probably end up being a reduction looking at the building to the building and patio within the patio. I think with that, I'd be happy to start the questions.
Thank you, John. On the file, it's the same two comments from Ashley Keeney and Jasmine Rosens on that file. So question from the commissioner. Let me see. Bill?
Yeah, I just have a very different impression of this project. The fact that you have this existing garage or whatever it is, and you're just putting the cabana on it, to me, I don't have a problem with this project. The other project, just building down on that slope, just gave me a lot of heartburn. But this project, I don't have a problem with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other question from the commissioner? While we're waiting for that, John, it looks like from your cabana, is there a retaining wall on both ends?
Yes, so it is sloping where that garage is now. It is almost like a walkout so that the grade stays that low behind it. And there is wing walls off of that garage to just kind of maintain that upper level.
If we approve this project, can you provide top of the wall elevations on the retaining wall on both ends?
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
Any other question from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the top of the wall on the retaining wall on both ends?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadieli.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Zampoon,
Aye.
Agni.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck, John.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice night.
So the next NOI is Donald Bullion, reconstructions of a single-family residence at 350 Sandy Neck Road, West Barnstable, as shown on the Assessors Map 136, Parcel 014-002. Mike.
Yes, hello, Mr. Chairman. Mike Ball from Marsh Matters Environmental. I'm here tonight for the applicants, Don and Eileen Bolio. They are the relatively new owners of 350 Sandy Neck Road. They purchased this property a little over back in 2020. This is a 1.12 acre property on your right as you're going down towards the entrance gate to Sandy Neck Beach. What they're proposing to do is replace the existing 4-bedroom dwelling with a new 4-bedroom dwelling. They are on the site, we've got one resource area, and that's a locally defined freshwater isolated wetland.
Mike, do you mind to share the?
Oh, of course. Of course. Sorry about that. Let me find it.
This is a revised plan submitted this afternoon, but it was dated November the 27th.
That's correct. Can you see that plan?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, it was revised. Darcy had submitted comments a few days ago specific to the outer or the landward limit of the proposed mitigation area, asking that there be a split rail fence to define that boundary. And the reason primarily being is this: before the Bolios owned this property, there was an enforcement history and involving fill and then reconstruction of that isolated wetland. That was, if you remember, some of you were probably on the commission back then. That was 2014, 2015. When the Bolios purchased this property, they did some land management on their yard, really having no idea that there was this history and that there was such a strict prohibition of work in a certain area around this isolated wetland, this being a small basin depression of about 800 square feet. So Darcy just wanted to make sure that if mitigation was proposed, that it would be very clear to the Bolios that the limit of any type of land management, mainly mowing, would be at a fence line. A double rail fence with signage on that fence line. The Bolios they understand that. So that's what the revision is. In addition to that, we've added just a footpath around that isolated wetland so the Bolios could just get access along an existing fence line and to that back corner of the property. So those are the only two changes to the plan, which was originally submitted a few weeks back. So again, 4-bedroom house being replaced. The entire structure and hardscape is actually moving outside the 50-foot buffer to this wetland. There will be a net increase of 455 square feet plus or minus of structure and hardscape, and that's in the outer 50 feet of the buffer zone. So because of that increase in structure and hardscape, we are proposing 1,400 square feet of mitigation. So, and that area is that strip that's shown in gray on the plan. I think I can share my mitigation plan with you. Hold on a minute. Can you see the mitigation plan?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the mitigation plan I just put together. Very simple, a number of different species. We are including those pollinator pockets in it. Again, that's showing 1,400 square feet. This green area right here is area that in 2014 was part of the area to be unmanaged around this isolated wetland. So what Don Boley is, Don and I go back years, good friend of mine, he had just done some mowing in this area, and that was noticed by Darcy, and I noticed it as well. And so what we're proposing is that mitigation to increase that area of unmanaged buffer we'd allow this old restoration area to revegetate or grow naturally around what's already existing around this isolated wetland. I'll make a note on this isolated wetland. It has received an input of stormwater via a pipe that was connected to the downspouts to the roof drains. I don't know what more hydrology this wetland receives other than drainage from the downspouts during storm events, but we'll see. That pipe will be removed, and all downspouts will be connected to dry wells. I believe there are 6 of them around the house. I'm going to go back to the primary plan. So septic system is suitable for 4-bedroom residents. It does not need to be upgraded. As you can see, the leaching area is outside the 100-foot buffer. The garage is being replaced with a slightly larger structure, but that's also outside your 100-foot buffer. The nearest coastal resource areas are Coastal Bank, but all work is outside of the buffer zone to that coastal bank. Outside the flood zone, see what else I have here. Yeah, that's all I've got, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the project.
Thank you, Mike. Questions? Commissioner? No? Channel 18, any public comment on this? I saw Joseph.
Joseph Gill's got his hand raised.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a comment and a question. It certainly looks like a great project. We're going to miss that old house, but this is a significant upgrade. I do have a question about runoff. We're several feet downhill. We butt directly to the rear of this property. If I didn't say it already, it's Joe Gill at 42 Burning Tree Lane.
Thank you.
At the end of the day, will we see more, less, or the same runoff coming from the property?
Can I answer that, Tom?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think with the addition of the dry wells that will receive all roof runoff, there certainly will be no increase. I know we're Mr. Gill's property. It's I believe this is Mr. Gill. Are you 42 Burning Tree?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I see you there on the other side of the fence. As he is aware, the soils there are silt loam, and they're very, very, very tight. So he is correct that there is little infiltration through the soil layer, being that silt loam and below that clay. There's no change in topography other than just some minor changes around the house, but I don't see that there'd be any increase of overland or sheet flow onto Mr. Gill's property or any other property more than there is right now. And I've not been on the site during a rain event, so I can't really tell you where that water goes. I have a feeling this isolated wetland was probably constructed for the purpose of receiving overland flow or sheet flow and runoff off the roof. So I think that's the purpose of that basin depression. But that's the best I can do for you, Mr. Gill, in terms of info.
One thing I can get, and I can only add as a comment, is because right now there is 5 dry well proposed surrounding the building, and with the dry well, you probably have some crushed stone going to further down to the base material, so you should have a lot more infiltration through those dry wells than the existing conditions.
I'd agree.
Well, okay, that sounds good, and we wish them all the best with the project.
Yeah. Channel 18, any more public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None? Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to annual report for 3 years?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Byrne.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Zampu,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Good luck, Mike.
Great. Thank you all very much.
10:18. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sounds good.
Okay. We should coming back at 8:45. The last NOI of the evening is Thomas and Ann Telma. Proposed porch deck and relocation of a section of the stairs and walkway at 115 Calais Lane, Comaquid, as long as Assessors Map 351, Parcel 059. Dan?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the commission. I'll share my screen with your permission.
Please.
So this is the site here, just for an aerial, sometimes a little easier to look at. We're up on the north side, not too much going on, except we've got a little shrub wetland. It's similar clay type soils, and there's a wetland in here. It's not a state wetland, it's local, and the addition is going to be in the area of existing pavement and deck in that area there. So here's the plan again, just to the west of Caveney, we've got a long driveway coming in, curls towards the house. So it's a porch in the existing paved area. And normally we wouldn't propose something within the 50-foot buffer, but here, as you could see, it's well developed with a hardscape right there now. So we figured perhaps that wasn't the end of the world. There are some exceptions. And then here you can see there's an existing walkway where we're putting the new walkway. So the mitigation was very minor. It's 0 square foot, 0 to 50 change, and only 47 square foot between the 50 and the 100. When you multiply by the 3, we were required to put in 141 square foot, so we did 150 square foot of mitigation with some markers down along the driveway. Pretty straightforward project. It's local only. It's not a state jurisdictional wetland. There is some state wetland here, but we're nowhere near it across the street. So it's just a little IVW. Your local rules apply. I'd be glad to answer. Oh, and we're putting in a dry well to help improve the drainage situation, by the way. So it'll take a little of the roof runoff from the area and infiltrate it. So between that and the increase in plantings, 3 to 1, we'd hope you'd find that it'd be a good project and approvable. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Dan. John? John, unmute yourself.
I got lost in the break. Dan, the only minor suggestion, I'm wondering if you can move that work line up to the existing pavement driveway. You got a setback between that and the wetlands. I'm not sure why. Very minor.
Yeah, why not? There's a grass strip there. I guess there's not really a reason to put it back there. So sure, we'd be happy to make that modification.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the relocation of the work limit line and the south lane close to the driveway?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Zampu.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Lee.
Aye.
Byrne.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
very much.
We have one amended orders of conditions, Barry Morris, to authorize as-built retaining walls and raised garden plots at 585 Santuit Road, Contuit, as long as Assessors Map 007, Parcel 006. Arlene?
Good evening. Arlene Wilson, AM Wilson Associates, here for the Morrises. I think most of you remember this site. We talked about it last fall, relative predominantly to the front retaining walls and the small areas of raised garden beds. The walls run parallel to the road. The garden beds run along the south side of the house. Those features were not originally shown on the project plans, which is what's up here. This plan is what was originally approved. I think the next photograph and graphic show the retaining wall as it was built. The front yard was sloped and didn't provide much in the way of useful space. Mr. Morse and his landscape contractor decided that it would be beneficial to capture the runoff from the road before it got to the lawn. And so they built those retaining walls. The areas between the walls and between the upper wall and the road are vegetated with native compatible materials from the Commission's list. We had provided the mitigation areas for this previously. The area of the driveway is actually smaller than what the Commission had approved, and so there was more than sufficient compensation. The small areas of planting beds that run along the south side of the house are a little bit novel for the Commission, I think, because the beds are set in metal surrounds that sit on top of washed stone, and the drainage areas around those beds probably should not be, I think, assumed to be hardscape under the Commission's 704 regulation. They act more like a French drain, and the Commission's never included those areas of drainage in something that you need to mitigate for. Nevertheless, we've done calculations that include the stone beds, but not the planting areas as things that might require mitigation. I would note that all of those planting areas, all of the stone beds around them were areas that were previously altered. So they were either lawn or hardscape to begin with, or areas of non-native planting, foundation plantings, including some materials that are on the state invasives list now, particularly winged euonymus. We provided those mitigation calculations. We believe that we still wind up with a small credit in terms of mitigation, and that we don't need to provide any more. I understand the question was posed as to whether we counted the areas of the raised beds as requiring mitigation. As I said, we didn't, because in most areas, the planting beds either replaced maintained lawn or hardscape. So for the original project before these additional alterations, we had an excess of about 217 square feet of mitigation. That was the result of work where shrubs were added on the coastal bank itself and the removal of about 100 square feet of invasive material. The wall and planter mitigation, the work within the 0 to 50 requires about 64 feet of additional mitigation. But in the 50 to 100, we're actually 237 feet more mitigation, more vegetation than we had originally because of the replacement of hardscape, predominantly in beds 7 and 8, which are the two that parallel what's left of the parking court. Both of those areas replaced previous sections of the driveway. So I think we wind up with a credit overall of about 167 square feet extra mitigation. It's late. I know there's a lot of calculations here, but I'd be happy to try and answer any questions the commission might have.
Thank you, Arlene. Any question from the commissioner? John?
Yeah, I read the article you attached about these raised beds, Arlene, but I'm not sure that, well, for me at least, this is a question of first case, because you're asking that raised beds not be considered hardscape. And I'm not sure I agree with that contention. I have some trouble with that. Clearly, a raised bed does not provide the same environmental impacts as plants in the ground. You're saying that they're in this pervious rock bed, whatever, but the roots themselves are in that rock bed. They're not into the ground and underneath it for water flow, for the flow of the detrimental environmental impacts. So I'm not sure I agree with your argument in this case. And I'm bothered by the fact that since this is a case of first incidence, if we say, yeah, these raised beds are fine, they're not hardscape, does that then say every time somebody wants to do something, they can put in raised beds instead of plants in the ground, kind of a thing? I'm really concerned with that issue. That's where I'm coming from. Tom, I don't know if you've looked at the calculations, as you said you might do.
I kind of looking at the calculations, seems to be fine. I mean, I did not go and measure exactly how this curve and all those square footage wise, but ballpark calculation seems to be fine. But I have the same concern as the raised bed area versus the planting area. Those two are totally two different things to me. Let's go to the other commissioner for the comment. Bill?
Bill, you're muted.
Sorry. I was saying I agree with you, John, completely. Vegetation is supposed to create some kind of a filter for the wetland, and a raised bed is just not doing that. And so I don't think, you said that is a potential precedent. Yeah, I don't think we want to buy into that precedent.
Thanks, Bill. Any other questions from the commissioner?
If I might, Tom,
sure.
Just to try and answer that a little bit. Remember that most of these areas were either lawn or real hardscape, masonry walks and part of the driveway, where pollutants from parked cars might run off into the ground. And lawn areas where people are apt to use fertilizer and other materials that you would prefer not to have going into the groundwater. What happens here is that the areas where these little planters occur are at elevation 30 to 34. And they're back from the water where there is probably 25 feet width of salt marsh as well. In very sandy materials, water doesn't tend to flow with much of a slope. It's going to go reasonably vertically down to the groundwater. So you're going to get probably 25 to 28 vertical feet of filtration in that in the soil before it hits the groundwater and then travels to the edge of the salt marsh, where the salt marsh is taking up more pollutants because the fresh water tends to flow over the edge of the marsh. In addition to that, the Morse's gardens are organic. They don't put anything on them, no fertilizer, no herbicide. So there probably is less of a pollutant load running from the gardens that are in the area now than there were before the project was started. I understand there's a precedent issue, but I also don't ever remember this commission telling people that they needed to mitigate for vegetable beds or flower beds. I don't sit through every one of your hearings. I can't say I'm sorry about that. But I've sat through a significant number of them over a very long period of time. And I don't think you've ever done that. As I say, we've got about 164 feet, 67 feet of extra mitigation. I think that probably covers the total area of the garden plots themselves. And we've already included the stone beds in those mitigation calculations. So I really don't think that there's much of a problem here.
Just a reaction on two issues that you really raised, but the one about excess mitigation, I don't remember the initial hearing. We have had cases where, in fact, the applicant has said, look, I'm willing to put in this excess mitigation, but I would like to reserve the right to come back and take some credit for that. I don't know that that was the case in this one. I don't remember that happening. So I'm a little concerned without going back to that original hearing and seeing where that issue stands. I don't remember that. Secondly, I guess I get bothered to say, well, these beds are better than the existing hardscape. And that may well be true. But if we still consider them to be hardscape, they are not plants in the ground, then how do the calculations come out? Because I'm not willing, I'm saying I'm not willing. I'm deeply concerned with saying that we're going to consider these things as not hardscape. We're going to consider them to be like grass or plants, etc. That's a real concern that I have with this application tonight. That's where I'm coming from.
John, I think in terms of the mitigation banking, this project came before the commission was so concerned about specifying that we were going to bank the mitigation. I have other projects that were from that time period or maybe a little before that time period where we've come back and they've had excess mitigation and the commission's allowed the trade-off, if you will. So I think if we had a job come in today, we probably would specify that we were going to bank it, but people just didn't do it a few years ago.
Except, if I get interject, please forgive me for interrupting, but again, with that argument, I get concerned because I don't remember the specifics of this case coming before us. Maybe there was something that we gave up because we were getting excess mitigation. Was there a trade-off back in those? I don't know.
No.
So to simply say that there was excess mitigation, therefore I want to take credit for it now in the new application is a road that I don't think I want to take yet. That's all.
And I did not run the calculations assuming that the actual vegetation areas required mitigation. We could go back and do that and come back next week or at the next meeting if you wanted us to do that as a comparable. too many little tiny places for me to be able to do it right now.
Yeah.
It was hard for me and probably the other commissioners to follow all those calculations. So that might be a very helpful exercise.
It's just too many small pieces of things trying to account for. So,
can I make a few comments, please?
Can I go through the comment with the commissioner first, and then I get back to you?
Yes.
Any other comment from the commissioner first? None? Let me go to Barry. Barry, you have a few things to say?
Okay, Mr. Lee, thank you. All of this is happening outside the 50-foot barrier from where the water is. It's outside your 50-foot buffer area. Tonight, I've listened for the last 3 hours to talking about covering over dead soldiers that are creosote leaking soldiers within 10 feet of the water with 25 cubic yards of sand or dirt. These planters that I have are not really the issue. The main issue at this house was always the fact that the road was at 34 feet. The house was down at 29 feet, and there was always this huge runoff coming off. And we spent a lot of money and put a lot of engineering work behind making sure that there's no runoff that ever gets to these beds that we're talking about. I don't think it could possibly be illegal to put stone around somebody's foundation, which is what the beds that we're talking about in 90% of the case here. Everybody puts stone around their foundation, especially when there's a huge amount of water that's running down from the road. But we've captured all of that. We've captured all of the rainwater that's come off the roof. We put 10 cubic yards of stone out in the front underground. We put dry wells everywhere, 1,000-gallon tank cistern for the water to go into. And all of these gardens that you're talking about right now are actually less than the hardscape that was actually there before. But we're spending a lot of time talking about the precedent of a raised bed. A raised bed is chattel. A raised bed is like garden furniture. It's not completely clear what the advantage of planting directly into ground where there's only 6 inches of soil before you get to 30 feet of solid sand right down to the water table, and putting 2.5, 3 feet of good, solid, organic soil above it with fruit and vegetables. And to put this into an FDA, a USDA approved vessel, a planter, which has been approved and tested, unlike all of the other things that we hear about and all of the railroad ties that we see around Cape Cod. This is a better device for holding the soil. It doesn't put the roots down into the ground, but that's not the problem at that point. We alleviated all of the problems of the runoff. I'm not exactly sure what happened, why we ended up having to come back in June and then to come back now. But I think I think you heard me speculate on that in the past as to the approach that your administrator had towards my particular questions of another property. But in this particular case, I think that it doesn't make sense that you're being hard on planters or trying to set a precedent for that when 99% of the work is done with handling the drainage coming off of the road. Not a single spoonful of water makes its way down to the bay.
So Barry, right now in the runoff wise on your lot, you don't have any more excess runoff on site right now. Is that what you're saying?
Zero. We don't have one spoonful of water that makes its way down the path. Now, Mr. Gilmore will tell you, he's very familiar with the property. In the past, we used to have huge amounts of water that would run down. We have a neighbor who's put a berm that runs for 150 feet and dumps road water directly into our front runoff area. And it gets swallowed up there, down, And any that makes it to its driveway comes down and goes into a 4,000 industrial strip drain that costs $4,000 to put in, that puts it into a 1,000-gallon cistern. The pathways were reconstructed around the side of the house such that the water did not flow directly from the road. It came in from an access from the side. There's nothing that's making its way down to the road and down to the bank. And along the bank, we put in 26 bushes. We were asked to put in 22. We put in 26 thinking that some might die at some point and that we want to be ahead of that curve. And they're all doing very well right now. We're not sure what more we can do other than the fact that it was a hardship when we were turned down last time. I have a $4,300 bill from my consultant to show up with the exact same information this time as was available last time. I don't think that justice is being done here.
Thank you, Barry. George?
Yeah, just to back up Mr. Morse, I've known this property for many, many years. Previous owners always had problem. I happen to know him because he was the general manager of the Boston Bruins. But he had many, many problems with road runoff there years ago. I agree with Mr. Morse 100%. What he's done there, he's eliminated all that runoff, and it's all being captured on the property right now. And he's absolutely right. Nothing is going down towards that bank anymore. Used to be sheets of water running down that bank, and there's nothing going down that bank anymore. So I do agree with what he said there.
George, is that because of the retaining walls?
It's actually it's all the drainage that he's put on site. The retaining walls certainly have helped because they capture a lot of the runoff coming from the road, and those are all planted. He actually, I think on the original plan, he had a bunch of Ragosa rows that were going to be removed, and he actually replanted those Ragosa rows on those upper beds, and they're taking in a lot of the water, but any water that runs down the driveway is captured by that drain that he was talking about. And he also, I believe, you mentioned, Mr. Morse, about the front yard. You put a big dry well in the front yard too, also, as I recall. Right?
Yeah, it's a 1,000-gallon cistern surrounded by 10 cubic meters of crushed stone. Yeah. That's 5 feet below the soil level.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so every drain on the 4,000 square foot roof, every single drain drains down into dry wells, either in the front or in the side that are of similar 1,000-gallon on each of the sides.
Yeah.
In the past,
I understand the concern about a precedence here, but I also know, just because I drive by it every day, what the Morses have gone through on this property to make it right. And I would have a problem denying them this at this point, because I think what they've done, they've tried to do everything right there, and I think they've gone above and beyond. And to now say, because of these planters, you're going to have to mitigate for those. There's nowhere on site really to mitigate for them anymore. To make them get rid of those, I think would not be the right thing to do. So I think I feel comfortable with this. Does it set a precedence, John? Yeah, it might, and I'm not happy about that. But I just think, as Mr. Moore said, to do him justice in this case, I think he's done everything. They've done everything they could possibly do to make this happen. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, George. Bill?
Yeah, I am very sympathetic to Mr. Morse's pleas, and I think that this must be really very difficult kind of a meeting for him, very frustrating. Because there was hardscape, hardscape is removed, there's extra mitigation. I mean, I have like no problem approving this project. I mean, but when it comes to planter boxes, vegetable gardens, and that kind of thing in a 50-foot buffer, I have a problem with that. And so, because you're trying to maintain a natural 50-foot buffer that provides filtration, sediments run off from properties. And so if people are going to be building, planter boxes that are not filtering and rainwater that, in other projects, not your project, but a lot of other projects, planter box may not be a good thing. It may not be fulfilling the real value of a vegetated wetland. But in this particular case, I get it. And I think that we should, move forward and approve this. But it's not like I don't know that we're even setting a precedent. Maybe John will see some angle where we're setting a precedent. But because of the extra mitigation, the hardscape removal, where it used to, some of these things were where there was hardscape, like going, why are we? I don't think we need to get into that. But I do have a problem. I mean, it's sort of a theoretical thing. We as a commission have to deal with trying to maintain the well-being of our wetlands and our ponds, and putting in structures and stuff that mess up the natural vegetation is not a good thing. And so that's what this is about, I think. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. John?
Arlene, if you counted those beds as hardscape, but they went on top of hardscape, that's a net zero, right? So,
I'm sorry, John. Can you do that one more time?
Yeah, a lot of those beds went over existing hardscape, right?
Yeah.
So if you put 10 feet of bed there, whatever it is, and remove 10 feet of hardscape that it was on, it's a net zero. So I'm just curious, if you looked at those beds relative to where they are and what was there before, are we looking at a significant increase in hardscape compared to what was there before, or a decrease, or about the same?
If you count the stone beds,
right,
it winds up about the same. The beds 1, 7, and 8 were all in hardscape, total 100% hardscape before.
Right.
Now there's no hardscape underneath them.
Okay.
The others were where there were foundation plants before. So it's a trade-off as far as I can see. The foundation plants and mulch for the garden and the stone. So I think it's a wash.
I just going back to like what Bill said, I'm kind of looking, Mr. Morris, I really am very sympathetic and very understanding. I just worry because, as Bill Hearn said, I don't think we ever want to get stuck in a case where we say, okay, a planting bed is equivalent to plantings in the ground. That's an issue that I'm afraid of. So I'm trying to come around with something here where we can avoid that kind of a situation, if you understand where I'm coming from. Yet I'm very sympathetic, and George Gilmore makes a great argument, and I understand what you've been through. So I'm trying to say, Tom, that if we made it clear in the record that we would not consider planting beds as a replacement for mitigation, but in this particular situation, given what was there before, we consider it to be an offset. I see Ed shaking his head. Ed, your comment?
I was going to make that very same suggestion, John. I think as long as you make it clear that it's not a form of mitigation, that it's but in this particular circumstance, you will allow, because there's no net loss or no, it's essentially a wash.
And I hope thank you, Ed. And I hope that consultants like Ms. Wilson remember that distinction when you next come before us, Arlene.
Thank you, John. Let me go see Channel 18. Any public comment on this one?
Seeing none.
None. John, do you want to try to do a motion as what you just mentioned?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the project as submitted with a clear finding that planting beds are not considered to be mitigation, but under these particular circumstances of this application, they replace existing hardscape. Therefore, I would move to approve the project as submitted.
This is the amended order, so we are approving the amended order under those conditions. Anyone second?
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question before we wrap up?
Yeah,
What's the process from here? Do I have to come back for a certificate of completion now, or am I done? This is dragged on. I've got a neighbor showing up because my neighbors think that I've done something new, but this actually happened 3 years ago. This has gone on, and the idea of another $2,000–3,000 for a certificate of completion is beyond the pale on this. And I understand that you're dealing with a precedent, and I gave you a note. It's called chattel. It sits above ground. It's like managing a lawn chair. You don't have to even acknowledge that it exists there. It's not in the roots of the ground. But what is the process from here?
Arlene can answer that too.
Yeah.
Pardon? Yes. The reason we are here is because the commission denied the certificate of compliance that we had requested. So your regulations would say we need to reapply.
Right.
But I think at this stage, if Mr. Morse wanted to do it himself, he probably could, because it'll be a fairly simple process.
We're not done?
So we're not done. We're going to have to apply for a certificate of compliance. And should I expect that the board is going to approve that at this point? Nothing is going to change between now and then.
So basically, you should go and talk to Ed and then apply through the Ed. You can apply yourself so that you minimize your cost, and then you're done. So.
Wait a minute, we have to apply it again?
Yeah.
Ed, do you want to explain what they have to do?
Yeah. So
can I also just suggest, I'm a vegetable gardener, and Mr. Hearn, you indicate that my vegetable planters are somehow not plants in the ground. Do you realize that my entire plot of land here has about 6 inches of soil and the rest is sand? I can't grow vegetables in 6 inches of dirt with sand underneath. The only way I can grow vegetables. So are you suggesting I'm not allowed to grow vegetables on my land here on Cape Cod?
Within 50 feet in what is called a 0 to 50 foot buffer,
I can't grow vegetables.
We want to maintain a natural vegetated buffer. And
the answer is no.
And the purpose of that buffer is to provide a filter for sediment, bacteria, and whatnot that might wash into, and that does wash into, ponds, wetlands, and whatnot. And so we are very protective as a commission of that.
And we're protective as landowners, which is why we've mitigated all the road runoff on our property.
Right, and so only one of the, I don't want to relitigate this. I understand what we're doing.
Let's stop this discussion and go and talk to Ed and finish the process in terms of the paperwork. We're getting late.
Darcy, Carl is out of the situation. Is that it?
We're not discussing here now. Let's move on.
Okay. Yeah. I'll talk to Ed. Thank you very much this evening.
Thank you. We have one.
We should build a cabana, obviously a pool cabana.
We have one continuance, Stephen and Christina Foy, to remove invasive species construct sand path and fire pit at 0 Breach Street, Austerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 093, Parcel 036-005. This is a continuance from November the 14th, waiting for the issuance of the DEP number. And the quorum is everyone except Peak. The DEP has issued the number as SP3-6142. Would I have a motion to close the public hearing and authorize the staff to issue the order of condition?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
We have 4 easy certificate of compliance. The first one is Patrick J. Malampi, trustee 41 Sips Eagle Lane, nominee trust, SE3-5292. Second one is John B. and Melissa A. Laser, SE3-5611. Again, John B. and Melissa A. Laser, SE3-6006. William Laser, trustee Wings Away Trust, SC3-5154. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
We have 3 sets of minutes, October the 17th, November the 7th, and November the 14th.
I make a motion we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Our next hearing is at 3 o'clock on December the 5th. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:27, Mr. Chairman.